We had incredible technological difficulties this afternoon. And actually the audio stopped and I just carried on because I was like, well, forget about it, whatever, it's not gonna work. And then the second graders, like 5 or 6 times in the middle of my story were like, where's the music? Finally I was like, do you want me to stop in the middle of the story and make the music work? And they were like, yes! And then finally I got the music working and I said, should we carry on or should we start from the beginning? And they were like, you better start from the beginning. These kids were gonna riot on me if I didn't give them a multimedia experience. All right, let's try. Hey, there it is. But let's turn it up because you guys wanna hear it. Yeah. Great. Keep going, go as high as it'll go. That's the one. There once was a clever and passionate girl who wandered away from a fair. She ventured inside a wagon-like ride, and what did she find in there? The Squickerwonkers. Welcome, my dear, said a voice from the wings, to the fabulous Squicker Show. You dropped in your coin, so now you can join. Come up here and see how it goes. The girl looked around to see who it was that spoke with the sinister tone. But she saw not a soul, save a rat in a hole. It seemed that the girl was alone. At once there came a noise from above. 9 figures swung down from the shadows. Their bodies hung loose, as if strung from a noose, as if all 9 were hanging from gallows. Come on to the stage, don't be afraid. Meet my motley crew. They may have their vices, but those are life's spices. And I suspect, so do you. The head of the Squickerwonker troupe is known as Papa the Proud. He has terrible airs, never mingles or shares with commoners out in the crowd. The colossal woman on his arm, the crowd call Mama the Mean. Just follow the trail of what is derailed, and that is where Mama has been. Then there is Gilligan the Guilty, who frets and worries all day, following his wife, the love of his life, who takes but never does pay. Her name is Greer the Greedy, a thief with a great sense of flair. She loves to pick pockets, small purses and lockets, and hides what she finds in her hair. And how about Andy the Arrogant, the hunk of our traveling pack? He's broad and lean, a physical dream, but brains he clearly does lack. Let's not forget Lorna the Lazy, who mopes all about with a frown. She hasn't a hobby, her knees are all knobby, she's slovenly, sulky, and down. Gillis the Gluttonous has a heart of gold, but a body of donuts and pie. He does all his eating as if he's competing, and sadly, he's painfully shy. Beside him is Sparky the Spectacle, the ham of our curious brood. He likes to tell jokes, loves ladies, and smokes, and to our dismay, he's quite crude. Sorry about him. Megan the Mute is the youngest, and a leader who's hungry for power. She is wise and sure, her intentions are pure, but her enemies she will devour. So what do you say? The voice carried on. Will you leave or will you engage? Though the girl was suspicious, her fear felt delicious, and so she hopped onto the stage. Wringing their hands, the Squickers crept near, surrounding the brave little girl. Then humming a tune, they popped her balloon and stepped back to watch her unfurl. Her eyes, they began to well with hot tears as she stared at her limp balloon string. And then the girl's pout opened into a shout. She yelled, "How could you do such a thing? I'm Selma," she boiled, "of the Rin-Run Royals, and of all that is under the sun. And I swear you will pay for your childish display, for having your wee bit of fun. When my Gramp hears that you made me shed tears, he'll punish you all well and true. And I have no doubt that he will find out, for I plan on telling on you." She screamed and she yelled with fists in the air and threw an incredible fit. She bellowed and moaned, she kicked and she groaned, and just when they thought she might quit, from up in the rafters, a new puppet dropped, who looked just like Selma's old Gramp. Dark magic was stirring, strange things were occurring by the light of the kerosene lamps. With buttons for eyes and with straw for his hair, Puppet Gramp appeared by Selma's side. And in the girl's fury, her vision was blurry, so she turned to that puppet and cried. "They popped my beautiful red balloon, and for this you must have their heads." The Squickers drew near, and with voices sincere begged her, "Won't you show mercy instead?" Gramp had a think and shot Selma a wink. He said, "Here's what I'll do with this lot." She looked them all over, from blockfoot to shoulder. "Oh goody, these Squickers are caught." Selma thought. "Although I love my Selma dear," Puppet Gramp began to explain, "she's spoiled to her core, a constant chore, so I'll speak in terms very plain. If you take this girl into your group and love her as if she's your own, if you give her your care, I'll make you the heirs of the Rin-Run family throne." With those choice words, a change did take place, taking Selma the spoiled by surprise. Her strings were attached, her clothes became patched, and she suddenly had coins for eyes. The shock on her face turned quickly to rage as she mustered a miserable scream. But without hesitation, with determination, they muzzled that scream as a team. "She'll be perfectly fine, just leave her to us. We know how to love a spoiled child. Oh, you can utterly trust, it won't be a bust. We're mad for a child that is wild." Happy with that, Puppet Gramp slipped away, leaving Selma to think he'd gone bonkers. But her fate had been sealed, her dark nature revealed. She was one of the strange Squickerwonkers. Now, if you think she came to a terrible end in the naughty tale you just read, just wait till you see what will come to be in adventures that still lie ahead. Oh, but there's more. And so the girl learned on that rueful night not to be too quick to judge. There's a devil inside she might like to hide. But what if I gave it a notch? The Squickerwonkers. The Squickerwonkers. So I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. Does anybody have any questions? You should have seen it this morning. Like 100 second graders. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's okay. You don't have to have questions, but you might have books you want signed. Should we do that? Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize. I'm grateful. Let's talk.
Okay, so what inspired you to write such a story as that?
It was a combination of a million things, because this book has been brewing in my mind for 20 years. I wrote the Squickerwonker poem originally when I was 14 years old. I'm giving away how old I am now. Actually, I took a year off. I'm 35 years old now, and when I first wrote the poem, what was my inspiration was Dr. Seuss. I am embarrassed to admit that, because saying that I'm a fan of his in relation to my book means that people might compare them, and that's embarrassing, because nobody can hold a candle to Dr. Seuss. But I loved Seuss, and I loved the way he had this irreverent use of language. I mean, he had no qualms about making up words if he needed a rhyme. He didn't have to find it in the English language. He would just make one up. And I remember as a 14-year-old thinking, well, if he can make up words, I can make up words. And so I was in my room one night, bored, because I was a total loner and had no life, and decided that I would make up words. And I was writing this list of imaginary made-up words, and this one just jumped off the page, and it was the word Squickerwonker. And I liked the taste of it so much that I decided to write it a poem. And I made up this story about this clan, this family of Squickerwonkers who popped a little girl's balloon and ultimately inherited her intended fortune. But it wasn't until 20 years later that Johnny Fraser Allen came on board, and I decided I was actually going to do something with the piece. And once he did, his vision was so incredible. Like, what he created in these visuals, and what we created together in this book, was a real collaboration. So the story changed a lot. It wasn't marionette puppets on a wagon originally. All I knew was that the Squickerwonkers were human, but not human. I didn't exactly know what that looked like or what that meant, in kind of in the same way that Zeus's characters are human, but not human. You understand that they think like us, they feel like us, they're similar to us, but they're not us. And it was Johnny who said, what about marionette puppets in a wagon? And he showed me this amazing watercolor painting, and I mean, as soon as I saw it, I knew that he was the guy for the job, and that this is the story we were going to create together. Which is, by the way, of course, as you may have guessed, an introductory story to a series of books. And I don't know if my publishers will ever let me go this far, but in my mind it's 18 books, and I know what they all say. I know what every story is, and I know what I want to do with it. And for me, the story won't be complete until I've done all 18 books, and you'll see if I get to do that, why, because it has to be for the story to be complete. Oh, now we have tons of questions. We just have to grease the wheels a little bit. Yes? I do, actually. My favorite is Greer the Greedy. She's crazy. I mean, I'm not allowed to say that in a children's book, but she is. She's crazy, and I love that. I love crazy people. I have so many crazy people in my family, and there's this whole PC thing that you're not allowed to talk about crazy, and I'm like, but we're all crazy. I mean, isn't that... Anyway, so I love her. Yes?
I noticed that the book is a little more dark than most children's books, and I actually read them to my 5-year-old twins, and I had very different reactions from... One was really, really into it, one was a little nervous, I had to talk to them about it afterwards, but what kind of reaction are you getting from kids in terms of the darker sort of nature of the book?
Well, first of all, I love that you read it to your twins and they had totally opposite reactions, because one of the things that I get asked about a lot is the darkness of the book, and people say to me, like I actually had a request for an interview that I had to turn down, because essentially what they were asking me to do was say why dark books are so much better than not dark books. And I actually don't agree with that statement. I think we need all books. I think we need a rainbow of books for the rainbow of children that are reading the books. And I think right now that we're pretty heavy on the kittens and bubblegum books, and that there's lots of that out there for kids who love that. But there's not a lot of this out there for kids who have a palate for something more sophisticated and something that's darker. But interestingly enough, the reaction I get from every single adult who reads it is, oh my goodness, that's a scary kids book. And the reaction I get from 99% of the kids who read it is that it's not scary. And I think that we as adults have to be very careful not to project our biases and our opinions onto our children and close worlds off to them that otherwise would be open through our own fears, our own insecurities. Because I think children have a very healthy relationship with their world that's natural. And we have developed ideas that we've been socialized into. For example, clowns are creepy. Kids don't think clowns are creepy. Kids think they're funny and cute. We all think they're scary as hell. Like if you had a clown in your nightmare, you'd be like, oh my God. It would be horrible, but kids would be like, yeah, I had a clown in my nightmare. And it's kind of like, he would come save the day. This is kind of the same. Like we all go, marionette puppets, creepy by nature. Like you don't even have to do anything weird with them and they're already creepy. Kids don't know that. I took my son to, he's 3.5. I took him to a marionette puppet show, and then we went to this museum of marionette puppets afterwards, and we went into this very claustrophobic room that had about 600 marionette puppets all along the walls and all in. And I mean, we were literally closed in by these things. And 3 adults and 1 3-year-old, and the 3 adults were like, get me out of this room. This is terrifying. And the 3-year-old was like playing with them and having a great time. And I encourage that in kids, that I think it's wonderful that they can explore their world without us projecting our fears onto them. Yeah.
So as a follow-up to that, was the aesthetic a conscious decision by you and the illustrator, or did it just naturally evolve?
You know, Johnny Fraser Allen probably says it better than I do because he's fairly responsible for the depth of darkness in this book. We played a wonderful collaborative game of tug of war in this book where I was the light and he was the dark, and we were trying to find just the perfect balance. So it was all very conscious. But what he says is that if you look at the art of any artist, what you see is the artist on the page. And Johnny Fraser Allen will self-deprecatingly say, you know, I'm saying this on his behalf, that he's like, you know, sort of this like messy, scrubby, kind of twisted up, weird, you know, dark guy. And so when he creates, he doesn't set out to create a dark image. He doesn't set out to create something that would make us in this room all kind of go, whoa, what is that? But that's what comes out of him naturally when he said, if I decide I'm going to draw a teddy bear and a little girl and a wagon of puppets, that sounds really cute. And in my mind, it could be. But then it comes off my pen, and that's what I get. You know, that's what's on the page. And I think that's, again, another argument for the wonderful freedom of all of us being who we are and expressing ourselves the way we need to express ourselves. And so I, on the other hand, I loved dark books as a kid. I loved Edward Gorey. For any of you who don't know Edward Gorey and are into dark books, he's the best for children. He's amazing. But I'm a much more sort of fantasy-oriented, you know, that's what I like with fiction. I mean, I love The Hobbit, I love Tolkien, I love a lot of fantastical books. And so mine was more, let's keep the magic high and keep the colors bright and keep it inviting. And Johnny brought the depth and the darkness, and together I hope and I feel we really complemented each other to find a nice balance. Did I already? No, I didn't, yeah. Well, I've already gone to Leica, the animation company, who created the Box Trolls and Paranorman and Coraline. And I said, you guys have to see my book because it belongs in your studio. I mean, they would be... Yeah, and you know what was crazy is when I made this book, and I spent a year making it, I'd never seen Coraline. And all the puppets had what are they called? Buttons for eyes, because they're sack puppets. And every sack puppet has buttons for eyes. That's what they are. And I finished the book. Finished. Done. Dusted. And I showed it to Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson, who wrote the foreword for it, because I was working with them at the time, and I really wanted to see their reaction. It meant a lot to me what they would think of the book. And the minute Philippa Boyens saw it, she goes, "You can't do this." I said, "Why not?" She goes, "This is Coraline. You've got buttons up on it. There's too much of it. People are going to think it's a copy. You're going to get in a lot of crap for this. People are going to be upset about this." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Have you seen the movie Coraline?" I said, "No." So she yanked me into her bedroom, she turned on her television, and she said, "Sit here for the next 2 hours, you're not leaving this room until you've seen this movie." And I watched it, and my heart dropped into my stomach. I actually, for a moment, thought, it's all over. We've just spent a year making something that is gonna go away. I mean, I don't know how we can. So then I gathered myself and I went into Johnny Fraser Island with my tail between my legs, and I said, "Johnny, we have to change every illustration in the book. And we have to take the buttons out and figure out something to replace them." And what's wonderful about art and what's wonderful about creating something is that I always believe that the creation knows what it wants to be, and it will do what it takes to get there and become that thing. And we ended up choosing to use coins for eyes instead. And we realized that it was the most ingenious, change, because in Ireland, at somebody's wake, you put coins on their eyes. I mean, it's a symbol of death. And the Squickerwonkers, throughout the mystery of the Squickerwonker series, you'll start to sort of realize and feel like, I don't know if these are living or unliving creatures. And I think there's probably a sense of that already in the illustrations. So yeah, that Coraline reference I was aware of, and we actually had to go out of our way to fix that and change that. But to create a stop animation film like the Box Trolls, which if you haven't seen it, it's amazing, so good, would be a dream come true for this book. Yeah.
Coming from a background of movie and television, I would assume that there's a very different reaction to being appreciated by adults and adolescents than there is to being appreciated by children for writing such what was honestly a wonderful children's book. And I was wondering what that was like for you, the difference in appreciation.
I'm only just starting to get a taste of it because I'm just really properly releasing it to the world. But I have to say, I was at Comic-Con this year with 3 projects. And this was one of them. And I had a Squickerwonker panel, which was a total dream come true. I was like, I can't believe I have my own panel at Comic-Con, I've made it. And then I opened it up for questions after we did a Q&A with a moderator. And this, I couldn't have, I felt like people probably thought I paid her and planted her in the audience. This beautiful little 7-year-old girl came up to the mic and she said, "Excuse me, but can 7-year-olds read your story?" And I was like, yes. So I brought her up onto the stage and I opened the book and I was scared because I wanted her to read from the book. But there are some big words in this book. And I did that on purpose because as a little girl, I loved big words. I loved learning new words, and I thought it was a chance for parents to teach their kids new vocabulary. But I was like, what if I pick one and she can't read the word? And then I'm going to be like, I'll have egg on my face because it'll be like, no, 7-year-olds can't read this book. Okay, end of panel, bye. But she recited it beautifully, and she even played the voice of Selma when she said, "How could you do such a thing?" It was one of the best memories from creating this book, and I'll carry it with me. And today, as I said, I was at a public library with about 200 second graders, and they were going to mutiny on me if I didn't do it exactly how they wanted. And that was exciting for me because I was like, they're into it. They're really, really into it, and it just means the world to me. Yeah.
Feel that a lot of the newer books, like you said, are happy, and I started to go back to some of the good and read some of those stories, and my oldest is 6, 5, and 20, and when I started to read it, I didn't remember them being so dark and scary. All the parent stories are scary. The wolf, the parents who left the hands on their brother. My son goes, "Why did they leave him?" And I go, "They didn't have enough food." It was a hard story to go around. So what I've noticed as they start to get like that, they like the open. So I had to say that we call it magic, like you're saying. So how do you segue young children to talk about that part at the end of what happens there is magic? I like that you left it there'll be more stories, so it's not so ominous. They pick up on that little detail, like there's more, and like it's over. But how do you explain the dark? How do you explain the magic?
It's a really good question, and I'm going to get to your question, but I have to first address what you were talking about with the old fairy tales that we were born and raised on, we were bred with. I've been doing the same thing. I have a 3.5-year-old, and I mean, I started telling him stories in the car because we had a long car journey, and all the stories I know off by heart are the ones I was told. And so it was things like the 3 Little Pigs and Little Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. And my 3-year-old, I mean, I like this kind of stuff, so unfortunately for that poor child, when I was sort of getting to like suspenseful moments, and I'm an actress, so I'm being all theatrical, and I would build and build and build, and then I would just scare the crap out of him, like, rah, just really like make him jump in his seat. He was riveted. I mean, my son has a tiny attention span, even for a 3-year-old, and he was riveted. And then when I asked him, because he said, can you tell me stories again? He loved it. He wanted me to tell him stories again. And I said, okay, how about Goldilocks and the 3 Bears? He goes, oh no, Mommy, that one makes me nervous. And I thought, how wonderful that he has his own boundaries, and that's different than Mummy's boundaries, and he can set those boundaries. But what I've noticed is that he'll set them, and then he'll toe them. He'll sort of put his toe on the line and go, I want to just maybe just tell me the beginning, and he wants to go back to it because it was intriguing, and it really captivated his imagination in a way that other things he's read never have. And so, first of all, I think that's worth recognizing, is that children, they're very self-aware, and they'll probably tell you where their limits are. And I think it's fair and safe for a parent to respect those limits and not be like, oh, it's fine, it's not scary, let's read it again, give you nightmares. But I do think that they usually, like even with food, I've noticed my son will say, oh, I don't like, zucchini right now. But if I make him eat it and he keeps, or we keep trying it, we keep going back to it. Every time we have zucchini, you gotta try the zucchini. Like 2 months later, he's like, oh, I like zucchini. They change their minds, they move and they change. So, but to answer your question about this book specifically, I have spent a lot of time thinking about how you talk to children about this book, and I've actually attached a little video at the end of the iBooks to help parents sort of have the dialogue with their children about the book, because I do think sometimes parents feel a bit at a loss as to how to talk about dark material. And the main things that I focus on are, one, that it's okay for children to learn there are consequences for choices that aren't made well. And I think that's an important lesson for them to learn. I think that we've raised a generation recently of children, or now teenagers, who are very disillusioned and very entitled because their fiction told them everything's going to turn out okay if you're a good person. If you're a bad person, we'll kill you. I just don't think it's a very healthy message. I don't think it's a very realistic message either, because then when they're walking home and they get mugged and they were minding their own business, they cannot find a place for that in their concept of reality. It doesn't exist in their concept of reality, and I don't know how they can make sense of that if they've never at least been introduced to the idea that bad things do happen to good people, and good things do happen to bad people, and that actions have consequences, and those consequences are often related to the action, and our reactions to life. So that's how I deal with the ending, is thinking about the child's, they can think about moments where, did you have a moment maybe where someone did something not very nice to you at school, and you were just minding your own business? Were you able to turn around and say, it's okay, I forgive you? Or be kind to them even though they were mean to you? Or did you hit them back? Or did you lash out? Or did you have a temper tantrum? And it's a teachable moment for children to reflect on themselves. And then what I hope I've done with this book, which is different from the old cautionary tales, and I've done this intentionally, and I call it a modern cautionary tale for this reason, is that the old school cautionary tales divide the world into bad guys and good guys, us and them. And that polarized worldview has created a world full of suffering and war and polarization of people from each other, isolation. And what I think is important is that when we do say, have you ever had these experiences maybe, or do you do things sometimes that have negative consequences, then to go back to the story and realize that's okay. everybody in this story has good qualities and bad qualities. There's no good guy, there's no bad guy. And Mummy's got good qualities and Mummy's got bad qualities. And today at the reading, I asked kids to come up to the stage and tell me something really wonderful about yourself. And tell me something that maybe gets you into trouble sometimes, things that you're not so proud of. And to have children explore their self-worth while facing the uglier side of themselves. And I think hiding from that or telling kids you just have to be good is so unrealistic. And then they feel really isolated when they're bad. Like, well, now I'm a horrible person. Now I'm like the bad guys in this story, and I'm not a worthy human being anymore. I'm not lovable anymore. And I think that this book is really, the whole series will make these protagonists, these ugly, flawed, strange protagonists, the heroes, so that children can realize, first of all, even in my flaws, I can be a hero and I can have wonderful qualities too, and that the kids at school who might look funny or act funny, or like Megan the Mute who can't talk, that there's something different about them that is scary or uncomfortable at first, they have stories too, and they have good things about them too. Like Megan the Mute is wise and she's sure and her intentions are pure. You know, they're not one or the other. And that's really something I sought to do with this book in a very, very big way. Yeah.